Hello, and welcome to What's Your Story? Today we have a very important subject to discuss and a guest that knows what's what about it. And so we are going to be talking about that conversation that all of us should be having with our families about what happens at the end. And so I'd like you to welcome, as I'm welcoming my guest, Mary McElhattan. She is a multifaceted entrepreneur, a published author, a speaker, a chaplain, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a permission mission advocate. I love that permission mission. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, permission mission is so let me just tell the backstory on it.
Okay.
I was 14 years old when my brother had been tragically killed in a motorcycle accident. And I remember at that very moment feeling as if just a big ton truck hit all of us. And we didn't know what to do. We didn't know who to call. We didn't know how it all worked. And my mom, had to navigate all of this on a very difficult day of making decisions of where he was going to be buried. He was out of state. We were in a different state. And so I immediately at 14 was like, why have we never, like, I was asking questions and nobody wanted to answer them. So it was basically just kind of like, you lost your brother. We don't want to talk about it and try to figure out how life's going to move forward without having any discussions afterward because it was too painful for everybody.
It is painful. It's a very painful time. And that's one of the reasons that perhaps we need to have more conversations because we need to be more prepared for these things. They do happen.
100% of the time, Judy. It's interesting. I do ask people, just randomly, I'll say, do you know what the mortality rate is here in Las Vegas? And
I wouldn't know.
Most times, right? I didn't, when I was asked that question, I was kind of dumbfounded. Like, I'm not sure. It's 100% of the time. So when I know that something is a guarantee of 100% of the time, it made logical sense to me as an adult now to figure out why are we not talking about something that happens 100% of the time? And all these children like me as a child being left with all of this unknown and uncertainty and this devastation that nobody wanted to discuss after. So I if I was alone in it, I'm sure there's millions of people alone in it. And that is where Permission Mission was birthed. It was just everybody having permission to normalize the conversation so that, number one, we can kind of lighten up a little bit about something that's going to happen, right? There's a lot of pressure by not doing it. So talking about it and having prepared plans in place and maybe loving even your kids a little bit more, even when they're the kids that aren't doing everything right. Because when you have mortality in mind, it shifts things for us today while we're alive. Most people wait until it happens and then families are destroyed and devastated and not sure how to move forward.
So Permission Mission is an organization?
It's a company. I go out and I do educational presentations. I get before people and just give them permission to talk about it so that they can think ahead of time. I do speaking events. I am working on a book right now called Life Backwards, keeping the end in mind because I've been a big goal setter my whole life. And I've always been taught to do goals kind of this way,
Right.
like one step at a time. Well, with the end in mind, it just kind of went, whoa, I can think of things so differently now and take action and urgency and not be afraid and not be ashamed of this particular subject because why would we be ashamed when we know that it's something every single person on the planet will experience if they haven't already?
But I find that when I talk to older people about it, or I'll say, do you have your will or do you have a trust or are you okay? They don't want to talk about it. The older people, it seems like the older they get, the more they don't want to talk about death.
Well, if you think about it, it's because it becomes more sensitive. And if they've lost maybe a child or somebody very close to them, it's now a very sensitive subject versus, that, okay, now I'm getting older, I'm getting in my vintage years, which, by the way, vintage is 50 and over, right? All of us who are 50 and over are going to face the inevitable a little bit
Soon.
kind of more,
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah.
But in the industry that I work in, because I am, last 10 years, I've been searching the answer to why don't we talk about death and dying when it's happening 100% of the time. I've been learning in the funeral industry. So this
Yes,
is
you
where
were
I
in-
have learned
You
some
were in the
life
funeral
skills.
industry, weren't you?
Mhm.
For
And
quite a
I
while.
still am.
Oh,
10 years I've been working in with the largest funeral industry here in Las Vegas. And it's only because it just made sense to me. I have grandchildren and hopefully great grandchildren, and I never want to leave them with the feeling I had at 14 when I experienced that first loss. I just can't imagine leaving them thinking that I'm going to be here forever, or my children thinking that their children will be here forever. Because my mom's buried 3 children. And so she is the one who's kind of behind this mission to have permission about it, because she's been more open and healed a lot of her broken heart by me saying, Mom, we all can talk about this. We don't have to keep it a secret anymore. And I've seen just the weight come off of her, because see, nobody wanted to talk to her about her 3 dead children.
I think people are afraid to talk to other people about it. If you've lost someone, I don't want to come in and bring it all up and get you upset. So I think people are really trying to be considerate by not talking about it.
They are. And I'm saying the permission mission part is that if you want to talk about it, it's okay to talk about it. Because if you sat in your grief like I did for so many years, and my mom for so many years, that really weighs physically and emotionally and mentally on a body.
Right.
And so my thought, and the results have proven, where people have released this burden of thinking it's a secret when it's not. It doesn't have to be. And they're happy to talk about their loved ones who have passed, because it was so painful for people to forget them.
Yes. And they don't want to forget them.
And nobody wants, I never want my siblings to be forgotten.
No.
I want to honor them and
Exactly.
keep them alive. As right here, right? Keep them alive.
Yeah. So your brother was an inspiration, but who else was an inspiration for you?
For sure, my mom. And the role of being a grandmother. It's really, I always say, I wish God would have given us our children first. I maybe would have been a better mom. But grandchildren are just so precious and special. And I love watching my children parent their children. And I can just see how this will help them, if, gosh forbid, if anything ever happened, to go through such a tragedy and losing, a child, or losing somebody very close to that child, and then not understanding, people lose their friends. My daughter came on and talked about losing her best friend in high school and not having the courage to get up and honor her at her funeral, because it was so hard to not talk about it, or to talk about it, that she shared an experience where her grandmother passed away, and she was so proud to get up and talk about her grandmother and how it helped her through the grieving process. So I can only see helpful grieving, proper grieving, through having permission to talk openly about.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. So what is it that you'd like to accomplish?
I would like to know, by time I pass away, that the scale is way more for talking about it than keeping it silent. I when I came on 10 years ago to open up this conversation on why we don't, I would say, just based on some results, we were about like 96% of the world would not talk about 100% of what's happening.
Mhm.
So I was like, hey, if I in my lifetime can get it to like in the 60s, where 60% of the world is talking about it, and there's more people talking about it so that we are just more aware of it
Right.
and how we're leaving the earth unprepared. We didn't live this whole life that's already difficult and challenging to go out with it difficult and challenging.
No, and I don't think anyone intentionally means to leave their loved ones with a big mess.
No,
And
they
yet,
don't.
look how many people have to clean up big messes.
It's devastation on top of more devastation, and it doesn't give us that. I believe everybody on this earth wants to leave their family with some love and some hope and some just inspiration by living a tough, hard life. While we're here, we go through ups and downs all the time, and I can't imagine them wanting it to be harder when they leave. So, yeah.
But it is because you go through the loss, the shock and the loss of the person dying. And then you have all the paperwork and all the arrangements and everything to take care of. And then on top of that, many people leave their homes in a disastrous mess, and they haven't done any of the proper paperwork as to who gets what. And it's just a really horrible situation. And I can't imagine why anyone would not do it. I'm just thinking, is it selfishness? What is it that keeps somebody from going ahead and allocating who gets what and getting it all taken care of? And why would you want to burden someone with that?
I think you said it perfectly earlier. You said it. They don't mean to. It's a silent conversation that's been not had for a long time. So we almost have permission to just avoid it and ignore it and just accept that when it happens, it's however the dice roll, right? Some families do have a plan, and that common theme is, I am so happy I'm not guessing at what they want, because that's the hardest decision somebody has to make on somebody else's life is, what are their wishes? What if they never spoke about what they want? Where do all their things go? How do I best honor them with a legacy when you're dealing with all the other stuff that hasn't been done because the conversation's not been had? It almost just, again, it just sucks the life out of that person who may be married, and then it sucks the life out of that family, and then there's more problems to arise than if somebody just simply sits down with someone like me and says, and I ask them the question, what is the vision for that day for you? What do you want to see happen? And then it starts to relieve this pressure.
Yes.
People walk away feeling so much better. I've had couples where they go on cruises because they're like, here you go, kids, plans are all done. I've got the first biggest step taken care of, and now I want to go live. I want to travel some more. I want to go see. I had one of my friends who hadn't seen a family member for a very long time, had a falling out, and like, she's going to see him. She's like, I'm not letting this stop me anymore because of this simple little disagreement.
Mhm.
I want to clear that up. I want to make sure that I'm going out of this world with things cleared up.
Yes.
And that's what my fathers did. I had a stepfather and a biological father. I was blessed with both of them pre-planning with me. And this was before I worked for the company. So I feel like they gave me the greatest gift because they gave me life again. I felt like I could understand better that people do pass away, and they pass away in their own time. I was very angry that my siblings passed away early because of, well, your kids should outlive your parents. I heard that my whole life. And
I did too.
yeah. And then my mom, she'd always be like, well, not necessarily. And I didn't get it until, again, my adult years, kind of putting the puzzles together and the pieces together. It all fell into place perfectly by accepting that mortality happens and being more aware of it could give us an upper hand to say, maybe that's not healthy for me if I want to live a longer, healthy life. Because if you think about it, not having a decision or not having any acknowledgement of it gives us no freedom to choose. We kind of just automatically just kind of go with the flow, right? And then our health hits us with some issues and we think, oh, I should have went to the doctor sooner. I wish I would have followed up with that sooner, or I wish I would have changed my diet a little bit sooner, or, all these things we wouldn't even have an opportunity to think about if we do not have the discussion ahead of time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I've always believed that not making a decision is a decision.
Oh, it certainly is. One decision never made is a decision made. And it's usually the one you don't want.
Yes.
When I talk about mortality, I'll say it's going to land one of two ways. You're going to be forced or you're going to be fortunate. And I believe that most people want to feel fortunate. They do. They don't want to, they don't want to leave it all on their family if they don't have to. But we are afraid of it. It's not unknown. I mean, a large percentage of the world don't talk about it. So we're either afraid of it or we just simply don't understand, or we had a really, really tough experience with it. So we just want to shy away from it. We think it's easier just to shy away from it, but it's honestly not. It's so much. I felt more alive talking about mortality with my fathers daily for months than I had ever. And I've done some pretty exciting things in my life, publishing a book, working with the district attorney's office and turning around the child support division, to, working thousands of hours helping individuals and families get through over the hump of being
Yes.
afraid of talking about end of life issues.
Yes. Do you think men have a more difficult time with it than women?
Women are the majority that I sit with. And I'm trying to figure out why. I have had more men in front of me recently, simply just because their spouse of so many years is not doing well, or, so they're kind of forced. But I think men are more sensitive. They're providers. They want to take care of us. They want smiles on their spouse's face. They seem to be more sensitive when it comes to just life in general. Women bear children. They have, they get things done. So I definitely see way more women than I do men, but I do foresee that changing. I really do. I think that men are stepping up because they don't want to be left.
Well, and I think for men, there's a responsibility to continue to take care of your family. And that might be my personal belief. But I mean, if I'm a man who's been the provider and the breadwinner all those years, why would I want to leave at the end and leave them destitute, or leave them without a plan, or leave them without knowing? Why wouldn't I go ahead and take responsibility for that? But I hear a lot of men say, oh, no, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to die anytime soon, so there's no reason for me to do that.
Interesting. My fathers were those men.
Oh, they were.
For sure. It was, they knew, though, they both knew that their time was limited. So it was more of, I don't have time to waste to not talk about it. I want to get things right, and I want to lead the family right. And so I love that you bring that up, because, here I'm thinking they're more sensitive, but the reality is they are the ones who most times lead the family. I love that my husband leads my family. I'm okay with that. I mean, I'll lead it when I need to be, but I love that he's more the stronger one when it comes to, no, this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, I like that. I don't always want to make all the decisions. I would like to make decisions together.
What do you say to those people who won't listen to you?
That is a really good question, because at first I just get really frustrated because my heart just breaks for the family who's going to deal with all that aftermath. Because it's a sensitive subject, I also don't want to make them feel bad for it, because I know and how long it's been quiet. Long time before I came around. And I'm 58 years old, so it's been silent for way longer
Yeah.
than I've been around. So I respect that. And again, I don't know anybody's story. I don't know why they wouldn't think of it logically like I do. So I've got my work cut out for me.
Boy, you do.
I do. And people like you, though, who are allowing me the opportunity to open it up and have more community awareness to it, I really think that it's going to trickle into more homes, and people are going to be more apt to take some action and to think about. I have friends who are calling me saying, Mary, I was so afraid, but I understand what you're doing now. And I'm sorry that I, waited. And I'm like, no, you're doing great. I mean, just you acknowledging that this is important. I'm doing my work.
One of the things I see in today's world is older people. Let's say they've lost their spouse, and maybe they don't have children and they're alone. And then they meet someone and they don't get married, even though they both really care about each other. They don't get married because it's more financially, well, how would I say it, more financially lucrative to stay single, even though maybe they live together or they spend time together, but they both got their incomes from other places, and it makes more sense for them financially to stay apart. So they don't plan out how to take care of the other person between the two of them. And then one of them dies, and the children of one of them say to the other person, well, you must get out of the house, or you must go your own way, or, we don't care about you. And that person is left alone. So how do we get to these people and say, if you're going to live with and care about another person, you have to care about them enough to sit down and have this conversation and work it out?
I had this happen with my mom. And thankfully it all worked out. My mom found love at 80. It was the most beautiful love I had ever witnessed. I think because they both had lost children, they both had lost spouses, and they weren't able to get married because, well, they could have, but they would lose all their benefits to living and working their entire life.
Yes.
Because, and so that right there is a red flag to me, like, that makes no sense that they wouldn't be able to, how is that work like that?
That's not fair.
It's
but
not
the way
fair.
it
It
is.
doesn't work, but it's the same as the death industry, meaning it's not fair that death happens, but it does happen. And if we can openly discuss it ahead of time, that's what's going to make a difference. So the good news with my mom and her significant other, he just passed just about this last year. He passed away, but they spent 9 beautiful years together. And it went so smoothly because we had talked about it, because I knew that my mom would not. Can you imagine loving somebody, whether it's 9 years, or I've seen couples together for 30 years and not be married, and where the other children come in and do exactly what you're talking about. It is devastating to watch. And the only way that we're going to allow that not to happen is by making sure that everyone legally understands the laws.
Right.
My mom would not have a say so as to his demise.
Exactly.
His family would.
Yes.
We talked about it. Things were put in place. Everybody agreed. My mom was comfortable. It was an easy transition. And my mom, too, has all of her plans in place so that there's no confusion. And that, that's what we have an opportunity to do here is these couples who are not married, please go in and get your plans in place. There are legal documents that can allow somebody that you love and on your behalf handle those proper paperwork to make sure that things go out the way that we want their loved one wanted
Yes.
that to.
Yes.
Because that is not uncommon for those things to happen.
Oh, I've seen it over and over. And,
Yes.
now that I'm in this age bracket and I have a lot of friends that are losing their spouses or their significant others, I see these things happening, and they're really, some of them, horrible. The way children treat the person that their dad or their mother really loved and cared about, and yet they treat these people like they've got some kind of disease or something.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder what kind of children these people raised. It's
A lot of it is simply because, number one, now it's all emotional. See, when a loved one passes away, people kind of digest the loss differently. They don't all act the same way. They're all different. Some people automatically assume that they know what to do, and or there's that one family member who's saying everything that needs to be done to honor that loved one who doesn't have any financial means to contribute, but they're going to say what all needs to be done. So it causes that friction. And I think that I just think if you have the talk ahead of time, and a person in that situation, go to the local funeral home or reach out to me on permissionmission.com, connect with me so I can help walk you through it and navigate ahead of time so that there is no confusion. And the kids, because mortality is not a conversation, there's no value on death.
that makes sense.
There's no value on it. So these kids are disconnecting from their people they love without even knowing it, unconsciously, because it's kind of like, well, one and done, they're done, they're gone. But that's not how it works. Everybody goes through grief, no matter if you didn't like your loved one or not. We all experience it. It's not something we can outrun. You could have had the worst parent, but when they pass away, you will grieve. You'll grieve differently, but you will have grieving no matter what, because that's just how life and
Yes.
death work. They
Yes.
work hand in hand.
Yes.
The gap in between is just the amount of years that we get. I know John here talks about the dash. We all know about the dash.
Yeah.
And the dash is so valuable to really read it over and over again to understand it.
Yes, yes. Now, what about a person who has no one? Let's say their spouse has passed away, they didn't have children, their other siblings, and everyone's gone. So, what should they do? Who are they going to leave their things to, and what should they do about making an arrangement to be married? I mean, to be buried.
Yeah. They are my favorite people because I don't want anybody to go through this alone and think that they have to go through planning alone, because it is sensitive, right? And coming from such a large family, like, I can't imagine not having somebody there, but it could happen. It could happen when I get to the end of life. I don't know if I will outlive everybody in my life or not. But when somebody's alone, I love sitting with them to talk about these things, like how can they get their legacy alive while they're living still? Meaning, do they love an organization that they're proud of, education, animals, making a difference just in the community cleanup, food pantries. I mean, there's so many things that they can actually start contributing to ahead of time if they have the finances to do that. And boy, what a feeling that would be to have it while they're alive and not necessarily just wait until after they're gone.
Yes.
That's a big advantage to, having some planning in place if they have nobody to leave their assets to. But the planning part of it is, yes, making sure that their physical body is honored in the way that they'd like, because if they don't, I really don't have an answer as to what happens. If there's no one, it's even more important for you to get in touch with someone like me, because you want to have things carried through. We can take care of things from A to Z. There are things that you can absolutely do to ensure that your life was well lived and ends well too.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's good advice.
Yeah.
I'm all alone. I'm going to have to make an appointment with you.
Okay. You'll feel so incredibly empowered after. That's the aftermath to it, where most people don't think that.
Yeah.
You really feel the sense of freedom. I've had my plans in place for 8 years. I'm still alive. And I feel really empowered by it. I'm more conscious as to the way I live my life. I'm more cautious on the roads. And I always am telling people, be aware of everybody on the road, because, right, life ends unnatural more than ever.
Yes.
It's because of simple things that could have been course corrected by simply having the conversation of mortality does happen 100% of the time. I'm not saying to dwell in it, but I am saying, wake up in the morning and,
Be
my
aware.
mom always says, if my feet hit the ground, it's a good day.
Yes.
So appreciation for life, right? Feet hit the ground, life is good. Even if it's difficult, at least acknowledge people on the road, that you're sharing the roads with them, because that's what we have an opportunity to do instead of being rushing so fast. I was thinking this morning, I'm like, if you're going to speed, do the deed, because you're going to see me more quicker than sooner than later if you continue to speed.
Yes.
But a average person does not wake up thinking about that.
No.
We're just kind of in the moment, autopilot. And
what have we got to do today? Let's get it all done.
Yeah, let's get it all done in the short amount of time that we have. And time is really a precious thing when you are aware of mortality.
Sometimes I'll say to my friends, my mother lived to a certain age, my grandmother lived to a certain age, my great-grandmother, my sisters, they all lived to this age, which means that I probably got about 5 to 9 years left. And I'm trying to decide what I want to do with those 5 to 9 years. And my friends will go, oh, put that aside. You don't know that you're going to pass away in 5 to 9 years. That's the silliest thing. But it's not. It's something I think that we all have to be aware of. If we have a limited period of time, which we don't know for sure, but yeah, it gives us kind of an idea. Shouldn't we have been thinking about what we'd really like to do at that time?
Absolutely, because otherwise it will run out.
The time will pass anyway.
And I thought I would pass away in my 20s, because my brothers passed away one in their 20s, one in their 30s. And I thought, well, life really does kind of end around that time. Well, I'm 58 now. I'm still here. So I really am on some borrowed time, having more awareness to it. And I truly, truly believe we do not go until it is our time, unless we're doing silly stuff. I have people who want to go and they're not going. And I have people who don't want to go and they're going.
Yes.
So, to answer your, question of seizing the day, seizing the moment, good for you to just put some urgency, like, okay, well, it could happen. And these are the things that I want to get done.
Yes.
These are the places I want to go.
Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
I love it.
And so you want permission mission to do what?
I want permission mission to be in the world and recognized as something so valuable. People having permission to openly discuss. I have a vision in my mind that one day I'll walk into my own home and see people around the dinner table and them talking openly about loss and openly about wishes and what's important to them and what would they want to leave on their behalf to the world that they lived in and were a part of. To be honored. My brother was an adventurous guy. He loved adventure, and he passed away on a motorcycle. My other brother, he was, he had some mental health issues, and he passed away helping a homeless person. So it was interesting for me to see those two different situations, where one was, driving fast on a motorcycle and lost his life, but the other one was helping somebody and lost his life. So we never know how it's going to end.
No.
It's just going to have one of those days. So yeah, I vision them all being really okay and comfortable with it, so that my great great grandchildren and your great great grandchildren, you have children?
No.
Okay, well, so your borrowed one, your adopted ones, I'm sure there's some children
Yes,
that you've
there are.
impacted in your life.
Yes.
They will think back to this day and look at this video and go, it's okay to me. It's okay if I'm dealing with a health issue. It's okay for me to go plan. If
Mhm.
I'm 25, it's okay for me to go plan. Or if I'm 78 or 104, it's okay for me to go make a plan. I'm comfortable with it.
Well, I think it's very smart to go make a plan. I think it's very, very smart to do that. Yes. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing this information. I feel better just by talking to you about it.
Awesome.
I think it's a conversation that we all need to have. And a lot of people won't talk about it. As I told you, I tell my friends, I've got about this much time left. And they're like,
Yes. I did want to just bring up, I do the Permission Mission show, as you
Mhm.
know, and that's how we connected.
It's on this very channel.
Awesome. Yes, the WWDBTV. And every Friday, I am practicing with people to talk about mortality, how we can, ways of overcoming stress, ways of not holding grudges, ways of pre-planning, reaching out to me directly. If anybody out there has a story that they'd like to share around mortality and losing somebody they love, I want them to be able to come on my show or your show and simply share their story, so that they're not, my mom held in the loss of her first child. I don't talk about her much because mom didn't,
Yes.
but she does now. But she held it in for 62 years that her 9-month-old daughter had passed away of polio in the 50s. It was 2 weeks prior to the shot coming out.
Wow.
And the story was written up in the paper, but it was very painful back then for my mom. But now that she opened up, and after 62 years of holding it in, and I asked her, why now, Mom? And she said, well, because you give people every day permission to talk about it. And I didn't want to go to my grave with it. I wanted you to know your sister. And that was our way of getting to know our older sister we never met.
Yes, yes.
So that was a beautiful day. And it has continued to be every day after, because Mom is different. She's lighter.
Yes, yes.
So
I think it does lighten one's soul when they can talk about those things.
they don't feel like they did something wrong. I
Yes.
think my mom kind of sat thinking she wasn't a good mom, or wasn't an attentive enough mom, or did she give them enough love, or would people remember them? Those are questions that a person who loses a child are constantly going over in their head time and time again. And now I say, oh, permission is just, and the best way to start is just by starting.
Mhm.
Just, it doesn't matter what you say. You can't say it wrong. You can't do it wrong, because now you're at least opening up the conversation and saying, I believe that this is an important, logical topic to talk about.
It is. Well, I certainly appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're
This has
welcome.
been a great show. I hope people out there appreciate it as much as I do. Yes. And thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate you being here. I know that you probably got a lot out of this, because I did. And I feel like this is such an important subject that we must all pay attention to. And so thank you for being here, and come back and be with us again sometime soon.